I just want to quote Donna Haraway when she says, "It matters what matters we think other matters with. It matters what stories we tell to tell other stories with. It matters what knots not knots, and what thoughts think thoughts, what descriptions describe descriptions, and what ties tie ties. It matters what stories make worlds, and what worlds make stories." And I think this is from her book, Staying with the Trouble. And I think this is for us an invitation, especially in time of environmental urgency, to tell better stories, especially of the more overlooked aspects of environmental destruction, of ecocide. And this really links to the work of our next speakers. So we're joined by two really wonderful speakers, Mariana Berezovska and Louis Braddock Clarke. Mariana, whose work was just displayed as part of her project briefly before this. She is, as I mentioned before, I think community builder, storyteller, where she presents collaborations between artists, scientists, who create audiovisual projects, particularly about the extensive environmental destruction caused by the ongoing invasion of Ukraine. She will talk about her project Echoes of the Earth and Disturbed Ground, of which we saw a movie from, really complemented by also the work of Louis Braddock Clarke, who introduces us to deep sea mining as another frontier of often overlooked type of story about kind of the colonialism of this kind of new deep sea ecology. So Mariana, to introduce again a bit briefly, is a Ukrainian writer, editor, curator, creative producer based in between Kyiv and Berlin. She works at the intersection of music, research, cross-disciplinary cultural production with a particular focus on collaborative artistic responses to social and environmental questions. And I think she will introduce an interactive lecture giving behind the scenes of Disturbed Ground, which was an initiative, or is an initiative, inviting artists to explore the ecological impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So big round of applause for Mariana. The stage is all yours.
I'll just get a glass of water. So you can hear me, right? Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Mariana Berezovska, and thank you for the introduction. I don't need to repeat this. Now, and today I will tell you about two projects that I co-curated together with other people that I will also tell you about. And they are called Echoes of the Earth and Disturbed Ground. And in these projects, we speak about the ecological destruction, and we try to look at this from a non-anthrocentric point of view, and to consider nature as a very important player in our life, not just something that we can exploit. I will introduce you first the how like this residencies and projects began and what we were trying to do with them. But then it's very important for me to tell you about the broader context, because as Abdu mentioned, like now it's really important to tell the stories. And what I also understand about my work, it's very important for me to put things into perspective and to point out and show to people around that things don't happen in isolation. Things are very connected with each other, and many things can be happening at the same time, and they affect each other, and they affect me, they affect people around me, they affect our lives. So first, the two things that I will focus on today. First is Echoes of the Earth. It's a residency and a research program, and that resulted in audiovisual exhibition and performances at the cultural space in Kyiv called K41. or it's also the official name of it is There Does Not Exist, which is represented by this sign, as you can see here. And this project involved 6 amazing artists that were selected to participate. And you saw one of the works today. That was the result, the video by Vartan was the result of this residency. We will look into this in more detail. And the second project was sort of a continuation that we did together with the CTM Festival, and it was called Disturbed Ground. And for this project, we selected 2 pairings of artists who worked over the year on performances that were also informed by the ecological research. And we will also go deeper into this. You know, when I was preparing for this lecture, I asked myself and I asked the organizers who will be the people who will come to see this lecture. And I understand that it's like you are someone like me working in culture or studying to work in culture or kind of trying to find your way around this, asking yourself if you still should be working in culture when so many horrible things are happening. So it's all very relatable to me. And I realized that you will read the text, right? So you will be able to see the texts that are online. You can see them on CTM website and so on. But what I can do here while I'm here, after traveling 24 hours from Ukraine by trains and a plane, it's probably more interesting and relevant to tell you about the context in which we work. So this is what I will try to do today. But first, we will watch a few videos from the project Disturbed Ground. The first one will be the work just minute or 2 of The Core, which is a performance by Christina Kirek and Mark Bain, who happen to be here today as well. And the second one is the work by a group of artists, Andu Despot, Zeynep Schilling, Alan Hast, Mick Rudik, and Zero Day, which is called Heavy Waters. And we will also talk about this today. So kind of first we immerse you into this, and then we speak more about that. So maybe we can dim the lights a little bit. yeah, so now we have a bit of a context of what kind of performances we'll be talking about, what they look like in the end, and we'll go not only behind the scenes, but in the process of coming up with these ideas in general. And I have this slide that I prepared about myself. And as you can see, this is like my bio, how I work. I've been in Berlin for 13 years, worked with different cultural organizations, started a magazine. I've been writing for different magazines as well, and I've made 2 movies now about underground scenes in Tbilisi and Principe Discos in Lisbon. But since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, I've been going much more back to Kyiv. And since 2023, I've been spending half of my time in Kyiv and now all of my time in Kyiv. And now I will tell you like a couple more layers of what's going on with a person like myself, like yourself, at the same time, and how probably different it is to work in these conditions, right? So I also, like living in Kyiv, I go to different panel talks and lectures like this so that I can share a little bit how we work, what's going on in Ukraine and how we create projects, but also to connect with people who would like to create projects with us because it's very important. But then also there is another part of my life, which is a very important part, which is very different to how life is here and how my life used to be in Berlin. And this is that we live in the war, and many of our friends went to fight in the war, and we live in constant bombings, and we live in a militarized environment, and we are very close to weapons and drones. And as you might know, the war is really focused on drones. And myself and my friends, for instance, from the volunteer organization AIDX10, we collect money for drones, and we are very open about this, and we support our friends who are fighting in the war. And this is something that became very controversial to like my life in Berlin, where we have nice life, like here as well, where we do nice things. We don't support war. We are really far away from this. Like everything that has to do with nationalism, we cannot talk about this, about fight, about weapons, about all things military. But that became a huge part of our lives. And what's important is that we talk about this, we educate people about this, and we also we really connect this to the stories that we tell in our work as well. And very important is that all of the people who are my friends in this, they are all cultural journalists, artists, musicians, designers. Everybody used to work in the night scene or in cultural scene. So all the topics that are covered here at the Fiber Festival, like these were always have been the part of our lives, but now it's also weapons, and it's very important, a very important layer of my life. Also, that we live in the city that is being constantly bombed, and it's funny, when I was preparing for this lecture, I had to submit it by Sunday, and on Saturday night we had such a shelling, like such a crazy bombing in Kyiv, and I was sleeping in the corridor. Many of my friends were sleeping in the basements, in the parking lots, and it was like, I think it was the most intense thing that I myself experienced during the war. And these were like bombings going on in the center of the city, one bomb after another, ballistic missiles. And this is also a part of what we do. And like this is the part of how we do Disturbed Ground and Echoes of the Earth. It's also the part of it. Then the huge part of my life is my friends, and many of them went back to Ukraine after the war started. People started initiatives. People started like working for journalism that reveals the story of Russian propaganda, of the war. We also fight our own corruption internally really strongly, and that is a part of the process. It's a part of our everyday conversations. And I took this picture actually like exactly on the day 1 year ago when we found out that a friend of ours was killed in the war. And just on Tuesday before coming here, we went to his grave. It was the year of his war, and he used to work in the club where we do all of this projects where like things are happening, where people used to travel to party, like the best party in Europe, K41. And it's a great tattoo artist. And yeah, so basically, like there was a shelling on Sunday. I didn't deliver the presentation because there was the shelling. It was hard. And then in 2 days, we went to see the grave. This is a military cemetery as well. It's full of the graves of young people. And then I went to finish the presentation to my friend's tattoo studio. And I wanted to show these layers because they are really important, and that's like what's going on daily. And it's also not like I don't know, like a sympathy baiting or like telling you about our suffering. It's just the way we continue living. And I am actually really grateful that it's the first generation of Ukrainians going through the war and destruction that could actually stay in Ukraine and work in Ukraine. And we are not exiled, we are not persecuted within our own country, and this is great. And that's why this is like the power, I guess, that moves us to keep doing these things. I also included amazing artists to this presentation who were killed in the war, and they were not directly connected to our projects, but you know, their exhibitions were happening in spaces where we work. They've been making their work while they were fighting, and their work also informed what we do. And for me, it's like the way that they fought and the way they were involved in the war is really important also to remember when we keep telling our stories. So I wanted to include this, although it's not directly about the residencies that we did. And also, you know, when I was selecting images for this presentation, I was like, okay, we have so many images of destruction, Kakhovka Dam, like the bombed cities, blood on the floor, and so on. But like, I know that you've seen these images before, and I also understand I started to understand how it affects you when you see these images and you don't know what to do, and you kind of like, okay, I want to help, I don't know how to help, and so on. And there's such a term that is called trauma porn, and this is something that I try to avoid in my work, in our work in general. And also, I wanted to recommend the book regarding the pain of others by Susan Sontag. It really helped me as well to navigate through this work. I know that not everybody agrees with everything that she says in there. It's about looking at the images and feeling, or rather not feeling, the pain of others, and how telling stories and having conversation helps much more, and how it's not about, blaming people that they cannot connect to the pain of others, but rather giving a perspective of how to connect to this and how to listen to people and not just explain to them their history when there's nothing else you can do. Yes, so now we go to our projects. I'll repeat, it's Echoes of the Earth and it's Disturbed Ground. The war is really devastating, and it's going on, and it faded from the news a little bit, but it's still very, very strong. But there was a moment in 2023 when Kakhovka Dam was, there was an explosion there. It was torn. I don't know how to say, they put the dynamite in there, it exploded, and it's 2,000 square kilometers of the sea, basically, artificial sea, that flooded everything around it and went down the Dnipro River, and it flooded cities, towns, it killed tons of fish, of all the living species that were there. And for me, I was actually in Paris on that morning, and also talking about Ukraine and what's going on in Ukraine. And we woke up and there was this on the news, and I was like, okay, like this is such a turning point. It cannot be that people don't talk about this, that it's all people talk about, because it's so huge and it's, it's so visible, and it affects everything. It affects the nature, people, like the future. And I was like, okay, this is horrible, but now everybody will talk about it. And they didn't. And there was a little bit on the news, like one of the news that is about the war, but then it was kind of over very fast. And I was like, okay, where are the people who talk about environment? Where are the people who talk about ecology and like humanitarian disasters? And they were not there, you know? And for me, there was really like a very breaking point on how we have to get involved, that we cannot just give a presentation about what's going on in Ukraine now and say like, okay, can you help Ukrainian artists please, because they are displaced now and they need some work and projects and maybe a little funding. No, we have to go in. And this is how this is how it started. In my group of artists and friends who we work with in Ukraine, basically it was like based in the club K41. We have people who didn't leave due to the war, who stayed in Ukraine, who are interested in new technologies and like technology-informed art forms, which is, for me, was also really important, because I have this thing of like when you are from Ukraine or you're from Balkans or Georgia or like an African country, you're always invited to speak about your suffering everywhere. And then people who are from developed countries, they get to speak about the computer technologies and like robotics and things that are really happening in art. And I was like, okay, no, if we choose to stay, if we choose to speak about ourselves, we have to speak with the modern media about this. So I have a few more images of the environmental disaster that was happening back then. I mean, you've seen it, I know it. For instance, like one of the biggest things about Ukraine now, that contamination by mines is so huge that if they continue working, demining with the techniques that are available to us now, it will take us 757 years to complete. And for instance, like these are also the floods from Kakhovka Dam, that they flooded the territories that are mined, and it's a huge territory of Ukraine. So all of this is like us in Kyiv doing things and looking at this, understanding that it's right there, it's happening, it's real, and nobody is really talking about this, And many people who were artists, like Margarita Polovinko, who I showed at the beginning, who was later killed, she also went to Kakhovka, were rescuing animals, were rescuing people, like in the boats and so on. So people were really engaged, but we wanted to make it bigger. And I have this video here. This is like the thing that really affected me personally a lot, because this is how one of the towns is covered by the optic fabric, optic fiber, yes, optic fiber, sorry, optic fiber, and this is left from the fiber drones. And, it's not just here in this case, it's not just Russians do this. We also do this to our towns, because we have to survive, we have to fight back. And like by collecting money for drones, I'm also part of this. But this is what, this is what a town looks like. Oi? Also, I have a video for you of the shelling of Kyiv, like last Saturday. I think you've seen it on the news. But yeah, for me, it's just important to bring to your attention that everything is happening at the same time. I don't have so much time left, but I still want to talk about our residencies, Echoes of the Earth, and how we came to like doing this. And so basically, as I mentioned before, we had 6 artists working with ecologists. We found ecologists basically through people we know, just by asking, researching, who would be interested to talk about their current explorations of ecology. They go to the fields that are mined, they go to the sea that is mined, they travel, they write papers about this, but like we don't know much about this. We just see that things are, you know, being destroyed. So we had a really nice group of people around us, and we got in touch with these ecologists. We asked them, we got a little funding from Goethe Institute, and we asked them to give us lectures to tell us about their works. And based on this, 6 artists created their works. And one of them you saw today, it was The Forest by Vartan, and there were more. And one of them is like here, I want to tell you, this is the Gilea. It was at the Kakhovka Dam that was flooded, and that like after the flooding was drained, it became a forest. And it's not a wasteland, it's a forest now. Olha, she found a swimmer, a professional swimmer who grew up at Kakhovka, and she learned to swim there. She was swimming there, and now it's completely empty and drained. And it's a wasteland. But they traveled there together with Olha, who is a filmmaker, and she filmed her kind of swimming between the newly grown trees. It was dangerous, it was not allowed, but she found her way because, you know, of the mines, it's not allowed to go there, but yeah, they found a way. So this is this kind of artwork. Yeah, I think if it was like it was described somewhere in like official funding application, it wouldn't work because it is actually very dangerous. And the second work is my favorite, and it's a game, and it's a performance by Lisa Bilecka. And in this one, she basically she creates a game in which a dolphin lives at the bottom of the sea and is looking at this destruction as if people are looking at it. And he receives all this news on his, the news about how many dolphins were killed, how many birds were killed or migrated on his phone, and he's very depressed. And so she looks at the life of a dolphin, because we had like thousands of dolphins that died during the beginning of the war. She looks at the life of a dolphin at the bottom of the sea. And I think it's also like what's for me very Ukrainian is that you always keep your sense of humor as well when you like, even when things are really going down. So that was a great work, and it was funny. And then I'll skip this. Maybe we can go back to this, because I still want to talk about disturbed ground a little bit. And yes, disturbed ground. Here we see CTM team and our space K41 in Kyiv in June 2025. You see Jan here, who was just at the previous talk. So we applied for an application, for a funding application together, co-production funding, and we got it. And we explained to CTM team how we worked with the ecologists, what kind of data we have. We proposed 2 artists from our side, which became more artists. And they proposed 2 artists from their side, which is Mark Bain is one of them, to work on this audiovisual performances. And this is what you saw at the beginning. One is the core, that is using seismic data from the territories that have been bombed, and I'll tell you also how we collected the data. And the other is heavy waters, that uses the data of water contamination in the occupied territories, but it looks at the water not just from the perspective of the war that started in 2022, but in general how the heavy industrialization in these areas affected the water that is being like intoxicated now. Because, you know, like when Russia bombs Ukraine, it's a lot of infrastructure, and infrastructure means a lot of chemicals. And chemicals, when they travel through water or air, they get everywhere. And that was also like a very important point for us to show, like, hey, this is what travels everywhere. It does not have borders. It does not have a Ukrainian passport. It's our world. So there was a bigger message. We didn't try to be very, didactic about this. It was more about the emotional perception of these things. But yeah, it's been. This is from the first performance you saw, and from the second one. And I want to go now. I have 1 minute 45 seconds left. I want to tell you a little bit more about this one. It's very special. The Core by Christina Kirek and Mark Bain. It was a very interesting pairing. They didn't know each other before, but Christina worked in our previous residency with the themes of the land. And she was like, okay, I want to go deeper into the land. How do I go deeper? We were like, okay, deeper. We need some kind of seismic data. Like, how do we get seismic data? And we just started, like with her, we started actually Googling who writes about seismic data in Ukraine. And we found one ecologist, Alexander Leshuk, who actually he works with seismic data, but also now he records the explosions that are happening due to the shelling. And he was like, okay, you want these recordings? This is so weird, but okay, we can actually share it, because also there's this data also from military recordings, but this we couldn't get. So he gave us his files, and he was like, okay, work with the files. But it was also you cannot just work with the files as they are, because you need to decode them. So Christina found also a friend who could decode it and create the sound waves out of it. And this is also what turned out. There was an artist who works with such things, which is Mark Bain, who works also with the seismic data, and he had a big project about 9/11, about the Trade Center, that also had to do with the this kind of data. And we were like, okay, what about we bring them together? We talked to Mark, he talked to his family, and they were not happy that he will go to Ukraine. But it's been a kind of a half a year of discussion, and this happened. And it turned into a beautiful, very deep performance called The Core, in which they use the seismic data. Christina also uses the, you saw it a little bit her throat microphone, and they immerse themselves into 4 layers under the earth, and they see what's happening. They imagine themselves as the earth, I guess. And this is what's happening there. And the work is very vibrational. It uses a lot of sound buffers. I really wish we could show it at Fiber. I really wish that this work was shown, but I hope this will be shown sometime in Amsterdam somewhere. It goes through your whole body. So many people find it, it's not disturbing actually, because it's not noisy. It's very vibrational, but people find it kind of literally very moving. And I found it also very moving. But also we traveled to the north of, this is at CTM, and we traveled to the north of Norway with Christina and Mark, and they showed this work in a cave from the Second World War. So it was like a cave, a shelter, and Mark connected his seismic detectors to the cave there, and they played also, Christina played music based on the data she has from Ukraine, and Mark played with the data that he was receiving from this rock. So it was extremely impressive. So you need a very special environment for this, but it's amazing. And what's really great that, there was also the way for both of them to exchange. They come from very different cultural backgrounds, also the generations in which they work. And I think it's a really beautiful collaboration. And so here I have a link to Christina's site where you can read more about the research that happened. And it's also taken from her website. We have the areas where the explosions were recorded, and yeah, this is how she worked with them. She describes it, and here we have I knew that we won't be able to show it here. It's a little documentary that we did with CTM about the project, 10 minutes documentary. You can watch it, like everybody speaks there about their experience, all the artists. And I'm done, but just one last thing. There is a phrase that I learned from a Ukrainian researcher, Svetlana Matvienko, who was working with a Palestinian writer, Malaka Shvaich, and they have this kind of like a, I forgot how it's called, like a manifesto against resilience, right? And I really like quoting this now about like the resilience of the Ukrainian people. Yeah, stop calling me resilient, because every time you say, oh, they're resilient, that means you can do something else to me. I'm not resilient. And this also lies in the core of everything we do. So again, it's not waiting for sympathy. It's more like asking for understanding and listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariana. I honestly have so many questions about the work, the context, how you positioned yourself within it, your relationship with the artists. We'll do this in the panel in a second, but I definitely want to thank you for very vividly, refreshingly also positioning yourself within the work and telling the stories that you should do. And I see a lot of holding grief while also holding artistic expression, which I think is very much needed at the time. I think to complement this work and this journey we've just been on, we have our second speaker, Louis Braddock Clarke, who moves between research, fieldwork, and artistic process, reflects on how to work with rather than simply represent the earth, mostly with they're developing a deep sea project, which actually looks or questions the scale, extraction, and perception, inviting a shift from human-centric thinking towards more entangled planetary modes of extraction. Louis is an artist, researcher, exploring the intersections of geology, physics, film, and philosophy, working through listening, amplification, field-based methods. Their practices engages scientific and conceptual inquiries into disrupted ecologies and speculative Earth futures. Having spent their formative years in Cornwall, where a lot happens, they're surrounded by radon moorlands, granite quotas, shifting isolines, pixies, tin mines, and transatlantic cable system. So this was really, I think, a fertile land to ask these questions. They will give an artist talk focusing on their work, specifically the Deep Sea Project. So I'd love to invite Louis up on the stage. Big round of applause. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for this invitation and being here. I'm kind of, I was thinking a lot about like how to do this, because it's kind of about a beginning of a project. So kind of go along with me in this kind of experiment of this talk, and we'll kind of see where we end up. So yeah, thank you also to Yar for this invitation, and the warm welcome to the Fiber family, to Allegra for all you do for making today happen, and to the production team, Hans-Jan, John, Arthur, and Bram. And to all of you here in the audience, being here for the whole weekend and engaging with these kind of fragile territories. I'd also like to make a quick thank you to also the co-producers who are also involved in this project called Roving Rare Earth, which I'll be talking about. That's the Fiber Festival Lab Resident Program, Angelique at Mu Hybrid Art House in Eindhoven, and Fabian Florian at the V2 Unstable Media Lab in Rotterdam. Two important scientists also who have been in my life for a long time, who really contributed also to this project, is Sabine Gollner and Matthias Heikel. And to Yannick Goldner, who's here in the audience, curator, who has been navigating this project with me from the beginning. So today I'll be giving a kind of short insight into the research of art science making in times of disaster, and thinking through decay, death, hyper-extractionism as forms of endings, and seeing where art, culture, and actually humming becomes part of deception. As a beginning, I wanted to read a segment from Pablo Neruda's Love Sonnets as words to think through in the next 20 minutes, and to kind of extend these erotic intimacies to more than humans that will appear throughout this talk. A kind of love for darkness, bacterias, singular cells, a love for dark oxygen, and low sweeping sounds. Pablo says, I don't love you as if you were a rose of salt, topaz, or arrow of carnations that propagate fire. I love you as one's loves certain obscure things, secretly, between the shadow and the soul. I love you as the plant doesn't bloom, but carries the light of those flowers, hidden within itself. And thanks to your love, the tight aroma that rose from the earth lives dimly in my body. In 2025, so last year, I produced the work As Gems and Metal, which is, I kind of want to start here with a work before going into the deep sea, because it kind of really links to that, what's going on with fiber. So this image that you see here is a sculpture, which is kind of a sonic resonating body. It's actually a slab of deep sea lava earth. It contains fossilized whale ears. It contains compressed silica. It contains pyrite. And these discs that you see in the piece is where extraction kind of emerges in these holes. Through low-frequency vibrations, an algorithm performs a series of sweeps. And these sweeps are tuned to geology to search for rare earth minerals, oil, water, and other profit elements deep in the earth. The sweep, therefore, is the sonic prospector, crawling the veins and ruptures of deep time. I will now play a 4-minute extract from this installation, just so you can kind of tune in to those sweeps with me. The sweep is what you're hearing in the piece a lot. It's a sound that goes through many frequencies, and when it reflects back, it can tell you a lot about the geology. So here we're in the upper deep sea. Here on the ship deck of the RV Son in 2023, we bob up and down. The horizon is tilted, wonky, uncalibrated. We are looking over the future mining surface of the Clariton-Clipperton zone, the CZZ. In 1875, HMS Challenger, a science ship loaded with biologists, floated here. No mining equipment on board, only kilometers and kilometers of rope. There was more rope than ship, and this rope would plunge to the depths to measure distance. During this trip, they identified metal potatoes, later described as a great many peculiar-looking manganese nodules. Toriko Neruda, I love you as one loves certain obscure things. And in the deep-sea mud, they found abundances of cosmic dust, small speckles of dust from dead planets, imploded stars, and sleeping moons. There is probably enough dust here to form another moon if kintsugi'd back together. So here it starts. A colonial eye opens the deep, looking for new species, fossils, and opens a world of rare earth elements, revisited with mining actions 150 years later today. 4,752 meters deep. A polymetallic nodule, a rare gem, a manganese ball, a ferromanganese nodule, PMN, marine manganese, metal potato, deep sea rock, abyssal nodule, concretions from the deep, battery rock, sea floor ore, critical material, ocean mineral, ping pong ball sea floor, future facing minerals, clean energy metals, deep sea coal, ocean strip mining, ocean oil rush, hard substrate islands are just some of the geopolitical nuances of labeling this resource for mining. The language of the deep fluctuate back and forth semantically. They shift from scientific didactics, food consumables, and into techno-capitalistic ventures. A speculative wording disguised as clean and future vital. The International Sea Authority, known as the ISA, has 3 responsibilities in the deep sea. 1. Grant exploration contracts. 2. Writing mining regulations. 3. Protecting the deep ocean. 1, 2, and 3 seem to have contradictions. And in recent years, the ISA has been given a 2-year time pressure to give out licenses, which it has proceeded to do so, sparking political controversy between all stakeholders: marine biologists, mining companies, governments, NGOs like Greenpeace. Middle deep sea. Down the plume, we arrive in the mid-blues. It is blank, a blue that carries light to darkness. When you think of all the metals we use, day in, day out, it is hard not to attach them to the scenes of the deep sea, to wars, to disasters, to genocides, to a colonial watch embedded in the words, seek and destroy, while sugar-coated in corporate and consumer talk like untapped reserves, vast resource potential, and vacuum ready. The fact remains, most of these metals will end up in military technology or other forms of accelerated disaster. The International Sea Authority estimates there is 5.95 billion tons of manganese, 270 million tons of nickel, 230 million tons of copper, and 50 million tons of cobalt. The nodules and their layers seal the atrocities of time, small witnesses to changing pollutions, atmospheres, and the conditions of Gaia. As we descend further down, a series of bubbles will wash and swallow the eyes of the ROV camera. They move with group intelligence, like a shoal of sardines darting away from the mouths of bigger fish. Each bubble shifts as the pressure increases, and by the time we would arrive at the bottom, a human head would be the size of a pea. It takes 20 minutes about to descend on a winch to the bottom of the sea, which is kind of how long I'm hoping to finish this talk, although I'm not a winch, and my rhythm is definitely not clockwork. So let's see. As an interlude, I wanted to read another poem from Sylvia Plath called Full Fathom 5. The old myth of origins, unimaginable. You float near as keeled ice mountains. Of the north, to be steered clear, not fathomed. All obscurity starts with danger. Your dangers are many. I cannot look much, but your form suffers some strange injury and seems to die, so vapors ravel to clearness on the dawn sea. The muddy rumors of your burial move me. To half believe your reappearance proves rumors shallow. For the archaic trench lines of your grained face shed time in runnels. Ages beat like rains. On the unbeaten channels of the ocean, such sage humor and durance are whirlpools. To make away with the groundwork of the earth and the sky's ridgepole, waist down, you may wind, one labyrinth tangle. It takes longer than I thought to get to the bottom. Lower deep sea. A polymetallic nodule starts from a seed. The sea plane is a large, muddy, there is little oxygen and high pressure. The mud, when touched, poked, and stirred, blankets the sea like a smoke field from a techno party. All you need is a seed, a starter agent, a contamination to the muddy blooms, a drop of the anomaly. 3 seeds are known today, a shark tooth, a sponge, and a micrometeorite. A cosmic speck of dust, less than 3 nanomillimeters, spawning a metallic rush in the deep sea environment. The seed is the aesthetic carrier, making every metal potato unique in size and shape. They can be round, like an egg, elongated, like a cigarette, or flat, like a pancake. Their appearance all depends on the shape of the seed. Here, matter from space decouples from one unknown exterior, the endless cosmos, and into one unknown interior, the deep sea bed. It shifts from the macro as a singing space rock to a hot, hot speck of dust. The comet, it grows gills in the sea. Its hot body needs to breathe and swims down to the bottom to fossilize in its own growing stone tomb. In the 17th century, geoastrologists in Europe believed that stars, with their rays of light, entered the soil and produced gems. Each ray of light from a star would quantumly enter the underworld, plant seeds, have sex, then would blossom, producing veins of gold, silver, bronze, diamonds, and opals. This idea today, in the formation of deep-sea metal potatoes originating from cosmic space dust, doesn't seem so far-fetched. How we must relove the shadows that keeps deep time deep, and deep space dark, and dark oxygen unknown. Do not shine torches into the deep sea, and where has our intimacy with the anomaly gone? By the 18th century, Enlightenment shook European mysticism, steered to rationalism with taxonomies and extractionism, and crushed imagination, ridiculed and shamed geological speculation. Here data and gaps had to be filled, and earth sciences entangled with reason. Micrometeorites contain high concentrations of metal and act magnetically to attract other minerals to stick, grow, and be adopted. The mineral grows by attracting other metals dissolved from erosion or from underwater volcanic events spewing shimmering clouds. The cloud spreads, swims, and drifts with heavy bodies across the seabed. This is my favorite bit. It's like this really amazing fish that kind of comes out. Every million years, the nodule grows a few millimeters, a slow constant, due to the quiet and relaxed conditions, the low oxygen, the high pressure, and the darkness. This constant is now gone. This constant is contaminated. This constant is human-centric. This constant is not constant. Fragility is now constant. Shake me and we all shake. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. I wonder, is the deep sea really a deep distant, or does it encompass all the edges of the surface? The land, rocks, minerals, all emerge from the seabeds, pushed upwards over time. If the surface submerged again, would we all slip back into unknown knowledge? Would being in the dark slow down the linearity of science, the logics, and just speed up imagination? The abyss talks, and in the end, the bottom depths will be here on the surface talking to us, talking to those we don't know yet. This slow growth intrinsically means that rejuvenation is on a deep time scale, one of the slowest on Earth. Dr. Sabine Gollner, who I've been working with from NEOS in Texel in the north of the Netherlands, is exactly working on these types of rejuvenation projects in the deep sea. She produces artificial nodules on a small scale that will produce and replace the extracted ones when the mining actually begins, so that deep sea creatures will have a hard substrate and surface to live from. Around 80% of deep sea organisms and species are still unknown, unnamed, and also unseen. We do not know anything about their reliance on their environment or even their adaptability. More the question is, how many of them will become extinct? In winter this year, together with the science team, we will be placing, as part of the Roving Rare Earth project, a seed in the deep sea. A metallic body composed of metals desired by those shimmering clouds. This seed emerges from a micrometeorite, but is scaled up by a magnitude of 36,000. In a million years, this seed this sculpture, will have a 3mm rock coating on it. It is a deep time sculpture. It is a home to deep sea creatures, and also a witness to the future mining zone. It is also a monitoring station, a listening station, that in years to come will support deep sea marine research in the area. And in this part of the video, we're actually now at the bottom. We're at like 4,714 meters deep. And this is the first mining scar. So this is where they took the vacuum cleaner, they went through, and you have here the kind of traces. So there's kind of metal potatoes that I'm referring to are kind of on the left side here, and also a little bit you can see on the right. I was going to name all the deep sea creatures, but I realized that there's maybe too many to go through them all. So I think with the last 5 minutes, I will move on to the next slide. Yeah. In 1991, the NOA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, recorded a peculiar upsweep in the deep sea Pacific Ocean. The sound is strong enough to be detected across the whole of the Pacific. It consists of a series of upsweeps, still active to this day. It ranges from low to high frequency and changes character with the seasons. This is the sound I wanted to end the talk with, an ecological echo, the sweeps of extraction heard everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think what is really interesting and slightly harrowing about this is that if someone had asked me to imagine what the sound of extraction of deep sea would sound like, I would imagine this sound. So this is really appropriate. Thank you so much. I would invite you to, and also Mariana, to have a brief conversation about this I have a range of emotions, questions, things to ask you. But first, Louis, in the video that we saw, it's quite long, and you already mentioned that you're surprised how long it is.
Yeah.
What was the kind of most surprising aspect of the video for you personally, experiencing for the first time?
Yeah, I think for me it was, I mean, the first time the scientist told me it takes 20 minutes to get down there, I thought, oh, that's really quick.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I watched the video, and I think it's this this transition of blues, where you start to lose light, and you realize what it actually means to lose light. It's like experiencing a sunset. You don't really know it's happening until you're in this kind of euphoric state.
It's like gradual, and then it hits you all at once.
Yeah,
okay.
So I think this was the most poignant thing for me, was seeing this kind of, decay of light.
Yeah, yeah, kind of the gradual transition movement. And I found it also quite poetic, and I really liked the kind of integration of poetry in your presentation in that sense, because it felt appropriate, not imposed or something on the very scientific process that was happening.
Yeah, I think science needs more erotics. For
yeah,
sure.
yeah, for sure. Amen to that. I think that's a great place to start. The first question I want to ask both of you, I couldn't help but really think of a very human theme that I think was presented in both cases. And to me, there's a lot of like feelings of like loss, grief about people, places, that I think is quite personally, you're both personally affected by it in some way. And I want to know how are you able to hold these kind of emotions while diving into like artistic expression? How is the relationship between kind of loss and kind of, okay, now we need to do work of like collaborating, creating something that has artistic value? So maybe we can start with Mariana.
I think it was just necessary at some point, because loss, first it makes you really numb, so you don't really immediately dive into collaboration, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And loss can make people very isolated. I always think of, actually, maybe it's a very mainstream example, but in Midsommar, you know, when the main character, she loses her family and she has no one to share, and she goes like psychotic. But then even when she gets to this very strange situation at Midsommar, like people embrace her, and she's like, okay, let's go, you know. So I think this kind of embrace is very important.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you can feel very lonely in this. But I also don't think that you're like, oh, I should dive into collaboration now.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
not the first instinct.
Exactly,
but I think I also hear a lot of like, people want to find witnesses to their grief, right? And telling the story is part of it. Somehow.
Yeah, and I think I think it's a very ancient process, you know, of coming together, grieving, telling stories about those who are not there anymore, kind of passing on stories. So maybe it's even an instinct somehow. Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, more in a kind of world context. I mean, we're living in a state of mourning continuously, you know, and I think it's really about being able to talk about that in many new ways, you know, and it's also about finding new words, new vocabularies, new ways of being intimate with each other while in mourning and in grief. And I think that's one of the most important things, and I think that's where the cultural field also has a large responsibility to create those spaces and those environments where we can be together in these times of grief.
I think now, I can't help but think, because it's of course, there's like feelings of grief that are, I don't want to say nothing is not political, but some of it is like very personal, clearly. But then you're operating within like highly politicized topics almost. That I could imagine that you have to balance documentation, representation, speculation, subjectivities. And I don't know if there's been like resistance or tension that you had to hold with, you know, other people when presenting the work. How is that like?
I think you often are a party pooper when you come with your politics, you know.
Yeah.
People are like, this was fun, now it's not anymore. So this you get a lot. But then I guess you need to have more like-minded people. You know, I don't think that, for instance, like here is an environment where we can talk about these things. I don't think that every festival that's happening this weekend in Amsterdam or somewhere around, like you can talk about these things. So I guess there is resistance for sure, but it's nice to have opportunities where people who are interested in this come together and they can speak and they gather more people around themselves. Yeah.
But the resistance is more about kind of the mood shift that you bring. Isn't it, is there a bit more resistance that goes like you have a certain version of the story that you're presenting to people and they say, oh, this would not happen, or the deep sea is not a danger, or it's kind of more looking at the premise of the story that you want to tell, and they go like, oh, this is not as urgent, maybe.
I have something to say about this
Yeah,
because
of course,
since the beginning of the war, we came across such a thing as West-splaining, which is explaining from the Western perspective.
Yeah.
Very popular. It was first coined by someone from the former Yugoslavia in relation to Germans explaining them their history, and we get that a lot. Like, yeah, this is not, but like this is nationalism. This is like what Nazis would do. This is bad. This is, you don't do this. So a lot. And trust me, like I talk to many people, and that happens mostly with people from Western Europe, from rich countries, that I would really not be like, okay, but really explain you what you have to think.
Yeah.
And how it's the right way to talk about this, who, like where we can use the word genocide and ecocide, where we cannot, and who has the possession to these words, things like that. So, yes, I don't know from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, working in the science field a lot, like during this project, I went to a lot of, they call them mining stakeholder meetings. And I always felt like...
I'm learning new vocabulary already,
And it's kind of, it was an amazing opportunity because I am obviously an imposter in that situation. But, you're in a room for 3 days with mining companies, with European kind of regulators.
Okay, crazy.
With
I
marine biologists.
I have an image of this meeting in my head,
Most people are wearing suits, yeah?
Yeah.
And there it's really like you have to, there's this idea of like treading carefully and navigating it and not holding the resistance immediately, but also trying to use the language that they use to oppress resistance as a kind of a fuel, let's say.
All right.
Can I ask you, like, how do you get into those meetings?
That is just through long-term relationships and also creating the kind of urgency that culture is a part of that process. So when we're talking about disaster, we have to talk about culture. And so therefore someone from the cultural field should exist at the table as a minimum.
And what is the positionality of this person within the meeting? So how do the other stakeholders see
Normally they
this
think they're just listeners, but it's more about engagement and thinking about how...
It's a bit of a Trojan horse.
Yeah, I guess,
okay.
But it's open, so it's not like it's going in with sunglasses and a cap.
Okay. And I think my next question is more about, I think in both your talks you had an element of like scientific data that I think was repurposed to tell a story. I think, in both cases, I think it was really interesting. So I want you to tell me more a bit about how does collaborating with scientists, like how is that like? And what did you also learn from taking this like really crude data, whether it's seismic, whether it's the sweeps? How is that process like? And would you do it again? Would you do it differly?
Do you want to start? Because I also want to hear about yours. I didn't know.
So I think it was around 6 years ago I started working with in the Netherlands with scientists, and what I really enjoyed was finding scientists who want to have lunch together.
Oh, okay.
Like just going to their because normally there's a lot of barriers, there's a lot of bureaucracies, a lot of ways of getting through these places that are closed off, and they're very busy people, scientists, because they're actively trying to work on whatever. So having lunches with scientists was really fun because you can start to just like listen over mumbled conversation with food, different excerpts or anecdotes from the day, and it kind of filters in. And over time, I was just kind of situating myself in those places, and then asking, what about this? What about that? What about, did you, like, can we try something like this? And then using the kind of lab also as a kind of self-resistance to the science that was also being created.
But this was your own initiative also to do this. It
totally.
wasn't part of like a residency or funding. Okay.
But it's
really
not like a
impressive.
part of your like studies or something?
No. It was
Okay.
really through the idea of making art through in the science lab. So being in those places and being situated as a form of knowledge production. So to be in the thing rather than just reading an academic paper.
Yeah, for sure. And what was the response of the scientists to this
They're
kind of
really open. They're really
proposals?
keen.
Okay.
I mean, like it's also like you said, if you find someone, they first
Yeah.
feel like, why would you want to use this? You know?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? But then if you kind of give it this also nuance of being used to further the science, or to further the cultural scene, or to further an understanding of something that is unknown, they're on board normally.
You're almost letting a synergy emerge somehow from these anecdotal sharings that you described.
And I think that's also like in the history of science, it's very important that you have kind of these families, you know, that people are together in a room and they're thinking, not just writing down their ideas. It's really a dialogical process.
Cross-pollinating somehow.
For sure.
Yeah, in our case, it was very new to me, you know, to never work with scientists before, but we kind of knew that this would be the people who have the information, kind of that is the logic, you know, the information that we want. And then I learned that there are actually quite a few artists who work with researchers, scientists. It was never my field before, and that's how we started looking for them. And some were just like, no, I'm too busy, like, I don't understand what is this. But then some we found a couple who were, you know, like they are themselves, you know, like those who work by the sea, they work with kids as well, you know, they like the storytelling. And or some of them have field journals that we could look into, and they're like, why would you look into my field journal? So that was very surprising to them that we reached out. Not everybody was up to it, but some were. And we had, in the end, like of our big presentation with the dolphin project, you know, and with the Bartans, like we had two of the ecologists who could come to us to this like big hall, big screens, beautiful installations, and they've never seen anything like this before. And one of them said like, oh, like, I remember her saying this like very frankly, it's like, that's like the first time, actually about Vartan's work, like that's how first time that I imagine how a hedgehog would see the woods in fire. So it's very genuine, the ones that we met, and they also very interested in cross-pollination, as you're saying. But surprised, And in our case, it's also like we try to reach people who are actively researching now during the war. So they would not always be in Kyiv, for instance, so we have to get in touch with them. For the water research, we got in touch with a scientist who was in Berlin at that time, but she is from oh my God, I forgot the name of the city. Not Kakhovka, but kind of like from Zaporizhzhia, I think, like where there's no water right now. There was no drinking water. Her family is in this, and so it's very personal for them. And I think now like everybody's really asking for attention in the way that they are pleased that we also want to talk about this. For us, it was also like the question of ethics, not to make a like carnival out of data. It's like, oh, this is cool. This sounds noisy. So that's we wanted not to do this, and we ask artists not to do that, as well, because it might just look cool or sound noisy. We also said that we probably it's not ethical to, because at the beginning we wanted to reach out to some artists who went to save to the front line, who deal with like sound recordings, maybe they record something for us, but then we were like, okay, who are we to ask for that? And it's like there's a battlefield and we're gonna do a art project out of this. So these kind of questions were raised. But by kind of talking and finding people, that was the way we found them.
I really think it's quite impressive. I think maybe even a delicate balance of, you both mentioned responsibility of like, we have to tell this story, there's danger happening, but then there's also like creative expression that is the format.
Aesthetics as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have to engage in both and balance both, and I could imagine it's tiring.
I mean, I think data
hold both?
visualization is beautiful,
Yeah,
you know,
of
and
course.
everything that we've seen, it's beautiful, like beautiful videos, like the deep sea video that we've never seen before. So you can be easily carried away by that.
Yeah.
Tiring, yeah, I guess, like to to feel responsible for that.
Yeah.
But then you're also not called out, you know, as just someone who's using something beautiful and
Of
shimmering,
course.
you know.
Because of course the element of like warning people of impending danger or a danger that is already happening or aggression that is already happening is an imperative.
But you also don't want to re-traumatize people, you know, by like just using the explosions. Okay, look, this is an explosion, boom, you know. So we don't want to do this. So it's a fine line about this, as I mentioned, the trauma porn and being responsible. Yeah, but that's why we work with great artists.
Beautiful. I don't want to hog the conversation. We have not a lot of time, maybe less time than I thought, but maybe there's a question or two from the audience. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? There's one here.
Yeah, thanks. So, thank you both for the talks. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Louis, I was just interested to know why you chose the poetry format and what this eroticism is that you speak of.
Yeah, I think for me it's really about intimacy. I think a lot of the time when we talk about more than human agents or we talk about geological destruction, there is a loss of intimacy, which also comes from what you were just mentioning about the aesthetics of it.
Yeah.
That there is this kind of distancing that happens through the aesthetics, especially with data and with the screens. It also kind of exaggerates and amplifies this idea of distance. So for me, the eroticism is really through this embodied intimacy with the geological. And so for me, the works that I'm making are really born in this intimacy in a sense. They're really like, I don't make a video, like the video is just for a presentation, but the work is actually like using the mud, rolling around in the mud, using the metals, growing metals together. It's really through this kind of alchemical situations, which I think are very naturally erotic in a sense. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of eroticism, is consuming and being consumed by the materials.
I almost find it hard not to be poetic about it. And I always, I think this is a moment to remind everyone of like Audre Lorde's poetry is not a luxury, right?
Yeah.
If you see these things and you're like, this is actually an imperative to tell the story with all the emotional weight that it holds, right? And not going into like super objective modes of storytelling.
No.
Yeah, if I could get one follow-up, maybe that's for both of you. Like, where do you see the balance between working with poetry, for example, to bring back intimacy, which is very human, and then at the same time bringing in this non-anthropocentric perspective? Because I feel like there's an interesting tension there.
I think that's you have to like search for it, because you're asking like how you find the balance, because it can be very unbalanced, right, when it's just about the aesthetics. But I guess you have to maybe kind of like restrain yourself from being too obvious and kind of thinking that, oh, maybe people will not understand, so I'll show more, you know, I'll make it louder, I'll make it like more blinking. So you have to kind of trust that people will get you. This I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're also very limited in our expressions as human beings. I think it's a really great question you ask, is why also this poetry? But I mean, what I've been learning even just from these singular cell organisms is they also have different forms of expression, ways of making media, ways of thinking, ways of creating mystery, and probably they have incredible poetry themselves. We just have to find ways of maybe tuning into it so that we can also be with it. And I would be very interested to see singular cell poetry or bacterial poetry. Like,
well, maybe this is like the next project. Maybe I'm